Well, I think two things. One is that sports is an institution where we have almost across the board very strict gender divisions, and whereas other parts of society we've been talking more about and making efforts to integrate women into previously all-male occupations, for instance, or all-male realms in academia. There's sort of uneven sort of record of success there, but I think the idea is to integrate women and men. And sport is an area that I think we, from pee-wee sports with little kids all the way up through professional sports, for the most part, you know, there are a few little co-ed or mixed doubles in tennis, that sort of thing, but for the most part, we still formally divide women and men, girls and boys. The second thing, and I think it's related to this, is that sport, unlike a lot of other realms that we study as social scientists, is one that, in which I guess you'd say the body is very central. And it's really crucial in thinking about gender. And that's part of what I think gives sport its ideological power in gender relations, is that it has been an institution that has naturalized essentialist ideas and sort of categorically essentialist ideas. Women are this way, men are this way. And one of the things that's always fascinated me ever since I got into the field is the question of how does girls and women's movement into this field challenge those essentialist ideas of natural male superiority and categorical male superiority physically over women, which was really easy to believe in the 1950s when I was growing up, because there were no sport opportunities for girls in schools or in community youth sports or anything like that. But then once you start moving, you know, sort of post Title IX in the United States, and this is happening simultaneously in other countries too. What does it mean to gender relations? How do natural ideas of male superiority get challenged? How do they get reformulated? And how does that kind of formal sex division between kids and adults who play sports limit the ways in which those ideas can be challenged?
Yeah, can you maybe expand on that a little bit? So, as you noted, an important dimension of how we do sports is this segregation, and there's been writings of maybe parallels with military or fraternities and other areas of society. What is it about the sex-segregated organization of sports that leads to sort of unique effects in how we do gender and realize gender? What processes were?
Well, I guess you could look at that on a lot of different levels. I mean, you could certainly look at that on just the sort of local interactional level, where you have, as you said, with fraternities, military, other sort of homosocial organizations, where boys and men are kind of put together in kind of formal homosocial groups, and engage in initiation practices and develop hierarchies among themselves, and develop heterosexualized ways to bond with and compete with each other. So I mean, that's part of what packs the sort of gender construction power in organized sports, I think, is the homosocial gathering of boys, just as it does in those other sort of homosocial gatherings. Taking that all the way up through, some other things that I've studied, mass media coverage, the ways in which, still for the most part, mass media either ignores or trivializes girls and women's sports. And I say that with an asterisk, because I think there's been a real kind of uneven story of progress and lack of progress in the way the media covers women's sports, and a broadening of what we think of as the mass media as well. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was thinking specifically, is this homosocial environment then leading to a lack of awareness, a lack of empathy, you know, the sort of one-upsmanship of competitive hierarchies within gender? You know, essentially, what are the dynamics I was thinking of?
Well, all of those, I think. I mean, you know, one of the things I guess I've looked at is violence and the ways in which homosocial gatherings or institutions of men and boys, that violence is often part of what's produced and celebrated within those kind of groups, and I think that happens certainly within sports, but not only within sports, and that violence, it can be symbolic in the form of talk and joking culture that develops, and in order to diffuse perhaps or shield against any sort of implications of homosexuality and those kinds of male groupings, women are brought in symbolically through talk most of the time to kind of create a heterosexual bond, but aggressive talk. And this is, you know, Tim's work in the locker room, I think, was, you know, one of the formative. If you haven't read this, and in Tim's research on it was here, right? Yeah.
Large Midwestern University.
Yeah. Just, you know, that's one of the best pieces of empirical research, I think, that I still share with my students, that kind of shows the dynamics of how that happens. Using in-depth interviews, like as I have with a lot of my research with athletes in the past, you can't really get at actually seeing that process in the same way that Tim's research did.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, and Tim's work on the normalization of injury, that, you know, largely masculinity, not woman, not gay, and play through pain, you know, is